Hi, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for being here. We are so excited for this conversation. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And if you'd like to turn on your camera, we would love to see your faces. But if you're in a place where you cannot, that's okay to have them off too. Hi, Vicky. Good to see you, everyone. Georgette, Chastity, Sylvia. We are really excited to have you join us here today. And we would love to just have maybe you drop in chat. Where are you dialing in from? Where are you located right now? And maybe what is the maybe one word in which you can share maybe why you wanted to join today, or more than one word.
Ramona, I see that Karen is cooking in Denmark. And before signing on, I was chopping onions, which I don't recommend doing right before getting on a webinar.
Just don't wipe your eyes. Wonderful. So we have Seattle, Vienna, Austria, Maryland, cloudy London. That's okay. Sun will come up. Jenny from Toronto. Okay, fellow Canadian for you, Tammy. Nairobi, Kenya. Excellent. San Francisco, feeling confidence. Yay. New Jersey. Word is confidence. Yay. Rainy Madrid, Tucson, Arizona. Miranda from San Diego. Athena, San Rafael. Rule that meeting. Yes, it is such a great title, Tammy. Tiburon, Burlington, Canada. Wow. And people are joining. You guys, we have over 300 people registered for today's call. So I'm expecting that we will have a large group of us together, ready to learn from Tammy how to rule our meetings. I am so excited to introduce Tammy. But before I do that, I just want to give people maybe a couple more minutes to log in. It looks like we're at 50. I think this is just a wonderful audience that we have today. And maybe just to get us started, while you are dropping in chat where you are located and maybe what's a word or a couple of words around why is it that you wanted to be here today. Thank you so much for taking the time. In the meantime, I would like to just share a little bit about this community. Maybe for those of you who are new to the WA community, just want to introduce who we are. So WIA stands for Women's Impact Alliance. We are a nonprofit dedicated to supporting women leaders around the world in social change and social justice. And we host Empower Hour as an event once a quarter, and we found that people find this event to be really helpful. What we're doing here is really creating space for us to have conversations like this one with Tammy, and it's really just around how do we develop ourselves as women leaders, and that is what Empower Hour is bringing. We're looking to bring speakers like Tammy to support us with that. And then WI is a nonprofit. What we do is we have, in addition to speakers, we also have one-on-one leadership coaching, executive coaching. We have something called Leader Labs, where we are offering a 9-month program for leadership development. And then we're also offering a space for peer groups where people connect in on a regular basis and really supporting one another. So it's a really special program. And registration is now open for WIA's Signature Empowered Leader Program. So I just want to let you know about that in case you are interested to check that out. It is a global leadership development experience that's really unique. We've been doing this for many years, and it is just incredible to see what women who go through this program are really accomplishing, and also the community that we are creating. So just want to invite you to be part of that if you're not part of that community already. And women who are going through the Empower Leader program are just, um, it's a diverse group, women from all over the world, as I mentioned. We started in North America, and now it's, I think, less than 50% of women are in North America. And we really have a great representation from all over the world. And there are women who are either leaders in nonprofits, they're artists, they're change makers in every way. So shout out to that. Registration is open. So, with that, I want to introduce Tammy Heermann. She's an award winning leadership expert. She is the author of Reframe Your Story, Real Talk for Women Who Want to Let Go, Do Less, and Be more together. Such a wonderful title. I love that, Tammy. For over 20 years, Tammy has helped thousands of people around the world around what it takes to lead authentically, to lead in an empowered way, both themselves and other people. And she shares stories in talks like this and in her book around her own journey and how she raised from being a senior consultant to being a senior vice president and what she learned along the way. So, with that, I want to hand it over to Tammy, and we are so grateful to have you. Take it away, Tammy.
Oh, thank you so much, Ramona. And hello to everyone from around the world. I'm so thrilled that this is such a global audience. And so maybe we'll start by saying the research and the experience that I cite in this presentation, certainly, and I hope this changes, but it's based on cisgender women, and a lot of it certainly is kind of North American, European based research, but I have studied and personally worked with women from all over the globe. And well, there's different cultures and different spectrums for how women are socialized as young girls. There's some pretty stark commonalities around the world. That being said, if you experience something different, please share with us in the chat. So chat is open. I know that you'll be playing with me along the way. I'm going to be asking you questions, and let's kind of get the dialogue going as much as we can. Deal? If anyone's using any of the emojis, thumbs up, use the chat. All right. So let's start by, you signed up. I'm glad you love the title. One of you at least rule that meeting, because we spend 30 to 50% or even more time in our work life in meetings. That could be a one-on-one conversation, that could be a team, or it could be a large group meeting, but meetings are the main way we communicate. Would you agree, in our work lives? And so this content, I would say, is certainly gender agnostic. Anyone looking to kind of have more impact or rise in their leadership wants to be perceived as more strategic. But there are some things that make it tougher for women, and that's what we'll talk about today. So what does it even mean to speak strategically? How do we get people to perceive us as that? How does our gender, our upbringing, our norms, our culture impact that? And then I'm going to give you some very practical ways, things you can try literally when you get off the power hour today. And really how to kind of position yourself differently in the organization. Good news is my slides are chock full of stuff. Don't worry about it. I've got a couple of articles, and Mina, maybe you can put them in now. Short articles that are going to summarize everything we talk about today. They give examples, tangible stories and examples. So don't worry about taking notes furiously. So Mina will put those in the chat for you, and you can pick those up if you'd like. And if not, they're on my website. And if not, contact me, I'll send them to you as well. Okay, so what do I even mean by being strategic? And a past colleague of mine, and I really looked at this notion of the strategic has changed. And if you Google it, you'll find references to strategy and war strategy, and senior executives create strategy. And really, we knew that organizations were looking for everyone to be more strategic, and no matter what their level or role. But what does that mean? And so we designed a new definition, which really is about being deliberate and intentional with your thoughts and actions. So you got to get out of the busy, and you have to stop, reflect, connect, and make choices. So reflect on the situation. What's happening here? Who's involved? What's the deal? Connect different pieces of information together, and then make choices about what you'll do, how you'll spend your time, what you'll say. And when we think about strategic that way, all of us can be more strategic. So that's the definition that I'm working with. Now, let me back up and tell you a little bit about my journey and why I got so interested in this topic. A number of years ago, I was a senior consultant. I did my first 360. So that's when everyone gives feedback on your leadership capability, right? And of course, there was a lot of good feedback. The thing that really stuck with me was that I was seen as more tactical than strategic. And I was so confused. I thought, how can that be? I'm building a business. I went to business school. I create courses that teach other people how to be strategic. How is this coming through in my right in my feedback? And so I got really, really curious and I dug into the research. And one of my favorite female researchers in this whole area of women's advancement is Herminia Ibarra. And at the time, she was at INSEAD, which many of you might know. It's a famous executive education program. And she looked at over 14,000 360 surveys of senior leaders. And most of the leadership competencies, women scored higher. And we know that. That's been confirmed in lots of studies. There was a few that we were equal, and then the one that was categorically lower was these strategic skill sets. And she described it as women are vision impaired, meaning kind of sensing what's happening in the environment, making a plan and then influencing others into the execution of that plan, that kind of strategic skill set. And my heart dropped. I thought, oh my goodness, it's not just me. And then I went, yay, it's not just me. But oh, it's not just me. Right. And then I reached out. And it is surprising, right? And then I reached out into more research and more research. And I talked to other 360 firms and clients. And I said, have you found anything to the contrary? And I have yet to find a study where women are perceived as at least equal, right? But not more strategic. And so I want this to change. Do I think that we don't have this skill set? Absolutely not. Athena, that's probably why you're saying like surprising. Of course we have this skill set. But what's happening? Tell me if you see yourself in any of these. So please get your hands in the chat. Women tend to have these strategic blockers more so than men, the research would find. So one is executing with excessive pride. Give it to me. I'll get it done. And you got your to-do lists at work and you got your to-do lists at home and you're checking them off and boy, that feels good. And you're like, got all these balls in the air and you are executing and you are proud of that. Deaf that. I know, Iman, right? Absolutely. The problem is when we're so in the weeds, proud of all of our execution, what do we get? More execution, more execution. And it's hard to raise our head to the horizon. And like our definition said, stop, reflect, connect, make choices. That's the strategic skill set, right? So that's the first one, excessive pride. Hanging on to too much work. Research also shows that women tend to delegate less than men. And what happens often is the empathy gene kicks in. Oh, they're too busy. Okay, I'll take it. They don't quite know what they're doing. Okay, I'll just take it this time. So that tends to be a thing that we hang on to too much work. Again, makes it hard to raise up into more strategic thinking activities or making our, you've heard this from so many clients, Wendy. Yes, I know. Making ourselves subservient. So, what I mean by that is we volunteer more, especially for things like office housework or unpromotable tasks. And we're voluntold more. Women are actually penalized more than men when we say, oh, no, sorry, I don't have time for that, or that doesn't fit into my strategic priorities. But that's okay, right? We need to do that. We need to set boundaries. We need to work on things that hit our goals and the organization's goal. And then the last one, and this is what we're going to be spending our time on today, is the strategic communication piece. So we can't cover everything, but of course I have content on all of it, right? But today we're focusing on not speaking up. So either we're afraid to kind of put our points of view out there, or we think it's too risky, or maybe we're right, we'll look at all the excuses we say. But if we don't talk, how on earth are people going to, right? How are they are going to know what's all the good stuff in our brain? So I think Ramona mentioned when I started putting in place these small tips and tactics that I'm going to talk to you about, I was promoted 4 times in 6 years. And then I was like, okay, that's fast enough. Thank you. I'll just hang on here for a little bit. And they seem like simple things, but they completely changed the perception of how people saw me. And then, of course, I worked on some of these other things. I partnered with a direct report who was really like, Tammy, give me that, right? Keep delegating and whatnot. So saying no, right? All of those boundary settings. So I worked on all of these and that was the result. So let's get into what we're going to do. So today I'm going to focus on strategic communication. What's the mindset you need, and how might you need to shift your mindset in terms of how you think about ruling those meetings and speaking out in those meetings, language, and then delivery. Okay. And again, lots of content here that we're flying by quickly, but you'll get it in the articles with concrete examples and frameworks. Okay. So first of all, the mindset. As I go through this, tell me what resonates with you. Voluntold more. Yes, Pam, I know, right? We're conditioned to be nice and help. Ramona says, yes, we're going to talk about that. Okay, do you tell yourself in meetings, I don't know enough? I'm not expert enough. I'm not senior enough. I'm not this enough, that enough. And so it's safer to say nothing. It's safe to just, just kind of blend in here and that's safe. Is it though? Or I have nothing else to add. It's all been said already. Or I don't want to talk for the sake of talking. I hate when he does that. It's so annoying. People are just talking to hear themselves talk. Right? So do any of these internal, right, monologues, do you ever say these to yourself? Do they sound like they resonate with you? So what do we need the shift to be, right? So from feeling maybe foolish to fearless, or having that courage, right? And really grounding yourself in, no matter what your role, no matter what your position or how many years you've been working, right? You are an expert. You have experience and skill sets, but you also have unique observations. Maybe you're closer to the people you serve, right? Than people that are more senior than you. You have a lot of you, and we have to remind ourselves of that. You do have tremendous value add, right? So remember that. Or if you're like, well, I'm just going to not say anything because it's already been said. Well, I'm going to show you strategies to not pile on, but to build on. Because here's the risk. If you think that it's just safer to say nothing, this might happen to you. So I had been promoted. I got to the vice president level and I thought, yes, I've arrived. And then a little bit into my role in my one-on-one, my manager said to me, Tammy, you take up a chair, but it's like you're not even there. Mm, ouch, right? It wasn't safer to say nothing. And that's when I got the big, right, big shocking surprise that I had to work on bringing my voice into the room. And I was thinking all of these things at times. So that's the first mindset shift. Okay. Second one, does this one resonate with you? And I think it was Ramona who said this. Girls are socialized to be nice, to be polite, to get along, right? And so we grow up into women who tend to internalize more that feeling of people pleasing or wanting to be liked, steer clear of the conflict. Or really focusing more on relationships. That certainly is a skill set for women. Or how's this one? This was one of my favorites. People know I'm an introvert. So, if I really have something to say, I'll say it. Don't worry. And we kind of rely on people knowing that we're an introvert. And that's not enough anymore. If you want to have more impact on your project or in your larger leadership, whatever your role is. And so I'd like you to kind of reframe and think about, how do you think about engaging in conversations that maybe you have a different point of view, where it's my job to navigate, right? Different people and priorities and interests. That's life. We do that at home too, right? Our life is to do that. So that's part of our role. And when we can express, this is the second point, when we can express genuine intent, right? Productive conflict can even build relationships. And so it might sound like, I'm struggling with this decision, or I'm feeling quite strongly about this course of action. And here's why. I really want the best for our donors or our whatever the people are you're serving. And so here's what I want to do. So sometimes naming the emotion instead of showing the emotion, right? Naming it can bring things back down and we can have great conversations. And just, I need to have my voice heard. So you're not the one taking up a Zoom seat or a chair and not being there. right? So that's the second one. How are you thinking about that? And the third one, and then I'm going to throw it over to you in the chat. Um, are you sitting there going, "Oh, I know I have something to say, but I don't know how, and it has to be perfect, and I don't know how to say it just perfectly, and they're going to think I'm silly or not smart if I don't say it perfectly, or I just haven't prepared enough yet for it," or the emotions. I'm just experiencing this emotion I can't yet speak. Right. So you're paralyzed in this notion of needing to say things perfectly. And really, what I want you to think about, and I'll get into tactics in a little bit, is how do you be prepped and present, right? And you just have to be you. You're in that role because you're deemed to have great experience and skills. You just have to be you. And the more you speak up, the easier it'll become, right? Excuse me. And I see, especially in women, this notion of I need to prepare and over prepare for everything. And I remember reading, boy, a book from the past, The Confidence Code. I don't know if any of you remember that one, but in it, Kay and Shipman talked about, um, oh my goodness. Oh, I just had the names. Okay, menopause is hitting me now. The former Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, and Christine Lagarde, and how they confess to over preparing so much for their meetings. And they're like, I'm sure the men aren't doing this, and then just saying we need to trust our wisdom, we need to trust our experience and be in the moment. And I think that's something we can all kind of work on and tell our stories of that, because we don't need to be as experienced as those two women to trust our wisdom. And you can acknowledge your reaction. I talked about this one, and speak objectively. So these kind of mindset shifts, right? Where are you seeing that you might be stuck, or you might want to kind of reframe how you're thinking about speaking up in meetings? Wanted to start here. Lena saying, oh, she recalls a lot of these. Hi, Lena. Who else? So we talked about maybe not feeling experienced enough, or experienced or senior, or not knowing enough, or needing to say things perfectly. Yeah, you mentioned menopause. That is now me. I know, afraid to speak and forgetting words. I know. I know. Here's the thing. I have seen this shift dramatically, that we're talking about this issue more. The UK really led the way in this. And I remember a number of years ago, I did a post on, there's like a menopause day. Of course, there's a day for everything. And I think that post received the most conversation and views. Like, we really are talking more about this. So I just own it. I just say I forgot that, but I'm going to come back in a minute. um Not liking conflict doesn't necessarily mean you just want to be liked, or that you're an introvert. Yes, the points are separate. Absolutely. Those aren't points all together on the slide. Absolutely. So your saboteur is being an avoider and a people pleaser. Ah, yes, I've done the saboteur assessment too. I love it. Um, I feel like my voice must be person. Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into maybe some tips and different ways that you can. Oh, having to wait for my turn to speak. Yes, Raquel, we're going to get into that. How do you find the window? Awesome. Okay, keep it coming in the chat here. So let's start with language. And I don't mean are you speaking German or Farsi or English. Research has shown that people who speak strategically, or are perceived as strategic, right, use words that are important in their organization. And this isn't buzzword bingo. This isn't trying to sound smart. This isn't about using buzzwords. It isn't any of that. It's about showing that you understand what your project or team or organization is trying to achieve, and then using those words in how you speak. I remember being in one of those management meetings, and two of my colleagues came and spoke in a language drastically different than me, and they received so much more attention. And I had done all the work. I had my PowerPoint slides, I had my vision and my strategy and this and that. I'd done all the work. My other colleagues had nothing. They had no papers. But one of them said, my vision for my practice is da 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 da, and this is what I'm doing. 1, 2, 3, blah 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 blah. And everyone's like, oh my God. She talked about her vision, how it fit in with customer insights, about what her three strategic priorities were, right? She sounded very leaderly, very confident, and that she knew what she was talking about. My other colleague started to talk about quantifying with numbers. She said, well, I estimate a projection of this growth. I've seen from the competitors this, da 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 da. So they were tying their language to what was important for our business. And that's what I mean by speaking strategically. So these are some examples of that. Again, it's in the article that you get. So how do you focus on who you serve, right? Our people are saying they need this. The course of action we should take is this, right? Does that make sense? Strategic language. So again, you're not trying to sound smart. You're not trying to buzzword. You're literally talking and tying what you're doing into what's important. And I remember when I started practicing this one of my direct reports said to me, Tammy, I see that you're giving us more context now. And I said, oh, you've noticed, because I was tying to broader goals. And I said, you've noticed. I said, okay, great. I've been practicing that. What impact has that had on you? And she said, well, two things. One, I know where my work fits in better. Great. Like that's great, right? I'm building strategic capability in her now. And she said, and now I don't get so pissed off at you when you say no. And I started laughing because she understood a bit better why I was saying no. She still didn't like it, but she understood because it didn't tie with, right, our current priorities. So that's what I mean. Just keeping my eye on the chat here. Yeah, talking over people. You're looking at that. How do I get my words in? We're getting there. Okay. So that's strategic language choice. And I work with so many leaders who are looking to be promoted just in terms of how do they kind of just shift how they're talking about their work and their role. Another one is language and gender. And so again, boys and then men, right, tend to be more assertive, speak up, interrupt more. We've seen tons of studies on that. They tend to speak more in I. They downplay doubt, meaning, well, of course, that's the way. And I don't know if I'm sure you've experienced this. They just say something and everyone thinks it's true because it's just said so confidently, right? Um, Declarative statements. This is what we should do. This is the right thing, right? And boys, more so than girls, seek that dominance. And I've just seen this on the street outside with watching kids walk home from school, right? In for boys, a leader naturally emerges. And that assertiveness is expected, and they can, duke it out and fight, and then they get back to playing. And they tend to be in larger groups. Whereas for girls, right, we tend to socialize in smaller, and there's that BFF or that best friend kind of concept. And everyone has to get along and play nice. And don't say nothing if it's, if you don't have something nice to say. That was such bad advice from our grandmas and moms because it made us grow into women who thought, well, if we don't have anything nice, we shouldn't say it. And that doesn't always work in organizations. It's about how we say it, not if we should say it, right? So we tend to speak more tentatively. We speak downplaying, well, maybe we sorta, shoulda, kinda, maybe we should think about doing, right? And really prioritizing kind of relationships sometimes over. So this is what the research would say. I'm just reading here in the chat. Sophie is saying those differences can also be cultural, 100%, and that's why I started with my comment. And so, when I worked on content around conflict or coming to the fore, that looked very different for women in Japan than it did for women in the U.S. as an example, right? And so we operate on these spectrums of cultural nuances, absolutely. Oh, I love Katie says she works mostly in construction engineering, mostly with men. Yeah, so there's a difference in approach to sharing ideas. And it discourages you from speaking up often. Yeah, I actually did a leadership program with a construction company, and I think it was 5 years before we finally had a woman in the program. And I know we talked to her a lot about that. Okay. And I'm just going to look at Jeff and then we'll move on here. One thing to be aware of is that many men have these qualities as well. Yes, Jeff, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, in the beginning, I said the content is gender agnostic and, right, absolutely. Um, some of these things can be harder for women in terms of how we're generally socialized, but absolutely. Did you know that the term imposter syndrome, right, imposter syndrome, was originally the original study in the 70s just happened to be based on a group of women, right? And so this stigma stuck that it's a thing with women, but it's not. In fact, with high performing adults, so any of those kind of high achieving, high driver adults, 85 about, depending on the study you look at, but let's say about 85% of of professionals will experience imposter syndrome, like gender aside. So absolutely, Jeff, thank you so much. So we these things can be can apply to absolutely anyone. Okay. So here's something for everyone. Oh, imposterism versus syndrome. Yep, I like that too. Angela. Okay. So there was some really great research I loved. It was Amy Cuddy and her team, and she looked at what does leadership need to look like today? And what she found was it needed this balance of warmth and strength, right? People and our employees, they demand that of us. Warmth. They want empathy. They want their leaders to listen. They want, right? They don't want that command and control. So they want all that warmth and strength. Well, we need to know that our leaders are competent and that when things go wrong, they can, drive and be accountable and take us in the direction we need to go. So we need that warmth and strength. Of course, when they applied the gender research on it, women tended more towards having the warmth skill sets and men towards the strength. Not categorically, but generally speaking. But here's what I would say. We all need to look at what that balance is. And so some of you might be sitting there and going, I don't know what you're talking about, Tammy. I have no problem saying what's on my mind. In fact, I speak up and I get penalized for it. Yes, that's the assertive aggressive stereotype, and it's horrible, right? It's horrible. And so what I would say is we don't want anyone, being aggressive. We want people to be assertive, right? When it counts, when we need them to. So we all need to look at how do we need to adjust our power language up or down, given the stakeholders we're speaking to, given our own defaults, given what we're trying to achieve. So if you need to power down, right? Well, how about I tend to agree. I think I feel, maybe we can try this. That's when you need to power it down to get people on side. But if I'm guessing a lot of us need to kind of power it up. That's absolutely right. Here's my recommendation. I agree. And the first time I tried this, I remember I was in a meeting and there was an executive member there. And just as you've described, the conversation was going and going and it got out of control. And it's my meeting and it's my project. All I needed was to update and I needed a blessing on the course of action. That's all I needed. And it turned into this big thing, as often happens. And I thought, oh my God, I need to take the reins here because otherwise my time's going to be up. And who's going to get blamed? Me, because it's my meeting. I need the outcome. And so I remember I put my hands on the table like this and I went, here's what we're going to do. And the conversation just stopped. And I said, here's what I heard concern XYZ. Da 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 da. Here's what we're going to do. And they all looked at me and they went, oh, okay, sounds good. And like I'm dying inside. I'm like shaking, right? How could I have been that assertive? But in that moment with those people, it felt safe and like the right thing to do because it was my meeting. Otherwise, it would have ended and I would have had to call another stupid meeting because I didn't have what I needed, right? So in that moment, I powered up, right? And that worked. So how do you adjust to get that warmth and strength balance? Right. So what language traps do you fall in? I've seen some things in the chat here, but we talked about strategic language? Are you linking to what's important? We talked about maybe you're being too assertive, maybe you're not being assertive enough, maybe you ramble, maybe you stay silent, maybe what is it? What is it for you? Because we all have different things. Do you downplay your accomplishments? Do you downplay your ideas? What are some language traps that you fall into? I think I assess. Yeah. Assess, actually, I don't mind. Now, again, this might be a language thing because assess for me shows that you're um, thinking of different alternatives. But if you said, well, I guess, then that would not be a good thing, right? Sometimes I see people who feel assertive is the same as aggressive. Yeah, yeah. So, what is the line of assertive and aggressive? For me, aggressive feels personal, right? Aggressive feels like a personal point of view, or a personal opinion, an attack on someone. Whereas assertive, and we'll get to this again in just a minute, I think speaks objectively. Like here's what we're going to do. I've heard this and I've heard this, and I think this concern can be mitigated by this. Here's the course of action I'm recommending. That's assertive versus, okay, this is stupid. You're talking to, we can't do any of this. It seems silly, right? I'm exaggerating, obviously, but sometimes it can feel like that in meetings, right? Um, Emily says she doesn't go into enough detail, assuming that the reasoning behind my thoughts is implied. Yeah, absolutely. And Emily, when we're trying to influence, we have to also um, try to assess how much detail do people need, right? And when and for, right? Because sometimes people don't want the detail and sometimes they do. But I suspect you're not letting them in on your thought process. Maybe that's it. Like, here's the thing, but have you let them in on the detail of how you got there? That's a really important part of being perceived as strategic. Absolutely. Okay, so keep those coming in. So the last delivery, and again, I'm going to fly by these. I'm watching the time here, but you're getting examples of these in the articles. So the first thing I love, I call them my back pocket phrases. I keep them in my back pocket. They're part of my vocabulary and I pull them out with ease whenever I need them. You can create your own in your own kind of language. So instead of saying, well, I think I feel, my vision for this is in my experience. You could even put in my 25 years of experience, in my 10 years of working at this organization, in my hundreds of conversations with customers. Here's what I found, right? My observations are, right? So these sound intelligent, like you're thinking, like you're reflecting, connecting, and making choices. Right? Instead of piling on, if you want to build on, right? What's increasingly clear to me in this discussion is, right? It's funny you should say that. I'm certain too that, right? I was thinking the exact same thing right now. In fact, when I was working on this in my organization, on the team that said, Tammy, you take up a chair, but you're not even there, I had a really good colleague who I partnered with. And she knew that I had the same thoughts, that we agreed on things, that we even talked about them before the meeting, but I wasn't the first to say them. And she would refer to me. Well, in fact, Tammy and I were talking about that earlier. Tammy, why don't you go ahead and tell them? Right? So I partnered with someone to get my voice in there earlier before I was ready to do it myself. So she kind of helped bridge that gap for me. Or if someone said your idea that you already said and they got credit for it and you didn't, that happens, right? Great. Yeah, I said that same thing earlier and now I would add that, right? So again, in your language. Or if you want to provide a contrary point of view, so something different than how the discussion is going. Well, that's really interesting because I interpreted that differently. Let me tell you how I did, right? So not angry, it's just like, wow, you're very curious. So when you can stay curious, your mind has a harder time being judgmental. That's really interesting, right? I'm thinking about that totally differently. Thank you, Brene Brown. Here's the story playing in my head. So that's a lovely way to say things, or here's another way of looking at it. So I have all these lines that I'm able to just come, and one of my highest scores on one of the assessments is political acuity. And so my ability to go into conversations now with practice, it wasn't always, right? To be able to say things like this has really grown, which has been very helpful. Um, okay, got two more, well, yeah, two more main things to share with you here. Um, when I got back that 360 I told you about in the beginning, I met with one of our coaches and I said, I really want to work on this strategic thing. And she said, here's where I want you to start. I want you to start by asking different questions in meetings. And I kind of laughed and rolled my eyes. I remember we were on a plane. I'm like, come on, get like seriously, like that's going to help. And she said, yes, because questions aren't just about getting answers for you. Questions show other people how you think. And I was like, my mind is blown, right? And so soon after that, I wasn't in a management position at the time. I was invited to a strategy meeting. And I remember all the senior people, they started talking about how the customers were changing their views and like it's almost like they were complaining, like, God, now we got to do this, and now and they're doing this. And I was just really struck by like, what are we going to do in response to this? And so I thought, ooh, now's the time to use this new questioning technique. And so timidly I said, question. Again, because I was just starting at the practicing this stuff. I said, I have a question. I said, given our customers are shifting their needs from X, Y, and Z, what are we doing in response to look at our products, our pricing model, and how do we go to market to address these concerns? And everyone just like stared at me and my face turned red and I thought, oh my God, what have I done? Well, I asked a great question and I showed them that I was thinking about all of the implications on our entire product portfolio and our marketing and all of that, right? And I changed the conversation, right? Which was kind of going down a rabbit hole. And so what I was doing, I used the impact question. So there's three types of kind of strategic questions, if you will. And again, you'll get examples of these. So connection is just, how does this connect to that? How does it connect to our goals? How does it connect to the feedback? How does it connect to, right, what our donors want, whatever it is? Impact is the example I gave you. If this is happening, what are we doing about X, Y, and Z? And then tension questions is when like, ooh, we live in the gray, and it shows that you really understand the complexity of things. So one of my clients is moving towards a global centralized model of their corporate functions. And we've seen these things bounce back and forth over the years, right? So the question is, how are we going to gain all the efficiencies of centralizing these functions while still tailoring for like regional needs? That would be a tension. How are we going to manage that tension? What can we do to optimize that? That would be a great tension question. So again, it shows that you're really thinking about reflecting, connecting the dots, right? And then saying, okay, through this conversation, let's talk about that and take a course of action. Hope this is making sense. Okay. The last thing, and then we'll open it up to questions because I know I've thrown a lot here at you. Before I get there, I'm going to put it here. You can't just ask questions. You have to, right, give your thoughts. And most of us tend to speak in an opinion. So if you see at the bottom there, opinion, well, I think we should do this, or I strongly feel we should do this. It feels narrow. It feels like my context. It can even sometimes feel personal, or sometimes you might see people do it in a way where they feel arrogant or stubborn, and that's why people get called opinionated. And it doesn't help the audience see how things connect into the broader point of view, which is everything we've been talking about. So I suggest practicing a structure where you speak with a point of view. And so here's an example. And in the reading, I give you another example. But I was running a senior leadership program for women from all around the world. This was a global company, and we happened to be in Spain at that time. And the global chief sales and marketing officer was the stakeholder. He was paying for it all. He was my big boss in this. And we're in this Spanish tapas loud restaurant, and in the corner he goes, "Tammy, how's the program going?" And I thought, oh my goodness, I literally have 30 seconds in this loud restaurant with this man who's, really gregarious, and he's going to be off to the next thing in minutes. And what's the first reaction when say, oh, how's it going? What do we usually do? Put it for me in the chat. I'm going to pause. How's it going, Tammy? How's the program going? What would be our gut reaction that comes out of our mouth? Great, it's good. Exactly. Thanks. Rambling. Thanks so much for the opportunity. Right? Yeah. And I remember distinctly in that moment, I can see the restaurant. I went, Tammy, you have 30 seconds with this guy. You teach this stuff. Say it with a point of view. Reflect, connect, make choices. And this is what I said. I said, I've worked with many leading global organizations like yours, right? And similar things happen. Connect. I reiterated his goal. This is why he hired me. Your goal is to make more female GMs, right? General managers. Yep, it is, Tammy. Awesome. Here's what's happening. Your women, absolutely the highlight of the program is interacting with your senior executives. I've been getting some feedback, right? That it's inconsistent. Not everyone is getting those touch points. In my experience, that's the make or break thing of the program. 30 seconds out of my mouth. What do you think? And he's like, oh, give me names, give me names, give me names, Tammy. I'll reach out to them. I want to make sure they're all meeting. Awesome. Thank you for the opportunity. Goodbye. So he saw me as an expert, right? Not a rambling, bumbling, nervous, nervous person. And I actually got him to solve a problem for me, a really big problem, right? And so this one, I'm not going to lie. This one takes practice. Reflect, connect, make choices, but it's amazing. And I think the example I give you in the article talks about a talent review discussion. How do you talk about talent? So it's a completely different example, and you'll see kind of how this works. All right. Okay, I swear this is the last thing. And one of you said I can't find the window. How do I jump in? And then there was a whole bunch of stuff about, well, you can't interrupt. That's rude. Yes, all of that is true. But here's the thing, especially in North America, silence and pauses is a little bit longer in other parts of the world. Absolutely. Um, but if a person pauses for half a second, someone else will just jump right in, or the person will keep speaking. So the amount of time we have is so little. And so sometimes, yeah, sometimes we do need to interrupt. And sometimes it's just, hang on, I got a question. Because if you use the little hands up in Zoom, we've all learned to ignore that by now because it's just, right, we're not as good as at recognizing it as we were a few years ago. And so sometimes we have to use our body language. And if you're in person, we can do that as well. Women, not hands up. Please do not raise your hand like you have a question, but maybe an outreached hand, hang on, I'm in here. And sometimes we do. John, you finish, and then I've got something to go next, right? Um, Lena said, I've tried this and really love it. Yeah. So we do need to find ways. And the more senior you get, the more senior the people, the harder it is to break in. Like there's just this volley of conversation and they're so used to it. It's like they're playing this corporate game of word vomit tennis, right? Like it's really hard. So Heather, I would like to speak after you. Absolutely. Molly's asking why not the hand up? Because subconsciously it's an asking permission thing, right? It comes from our school days where we weren't allowed to just speak up. We had to raise our hand. And subconsciously it's like, I need permission to speak. And there's very few instances where you don't need to ask permission. You just need to get your spot. Yeah. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, as we move into questions here, what if some of these techniques are you really good at, or which ones do you want to maybe try? And I know we got some coaches on the line too. I hope that you probably got more tips and techniques to offer, or maybe you want to try some of these with your coaches as well. So I just have a summary, and here's some things you can try. Don't just go to the meeting, like observe yourself in the meeting, right? How are you thinking about things? What are the awful toxic stories you're telling yourself that you can begin to reframe, right? You're already having a conversation with yourself anyway. You might as well make it a productive one. And go to the meeting and observe a strategic communicator. I remember when I first started, I was taking notes on what my boss said, on how he handled the situation, on how he positioned things. Like I was literally taking notes on him because he was good at it, right? So you can observe other people as well. What language are they using? The third one is one of my favorite. So we're so task focused. Create a to-be list. I'm going to go into this meeting and I'm going to be confident. I'm going to speak once, right? So you can send these little goals for yourself. My daughter uses in class, she uses 1, 2, 3, go to really spur herself to ask a question, right? 1, 2, 3, go. So that's kind of become her mantra. Try some of the tips. Yes, I know, Athena, the to-be list is amazing. We have too many to-do lists. Like we should have to-don't lists, if I'm being honest, but a to-be list. So you can do it in front of everything. Today, I want to be inspirational, I want to be informative, and I want to be authentic with you. So I hope those things came through, right? Like we can have a to-be list for everything. Okay, what do you got? Connect with me, questions. And Mina and Ramona, I'm going to rely on you because I think you have a little bit of a wrap up too, right? So do we have time for some questions?
Yeah, I think we do. We do have a couple of minutes for some questions for sure. And if you'd like to just look at chat if there are any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Heather's saying, yeah, the to-be list seems to really be resonating. And then check in. Yeah, was I those things? It can be one, it doesn't have to be three, but um, when I was practicing really not just sitting in the seat, but taking up that seat, um, those were things I practiced. Okay, speak first, speak loudly. For those of you that have tentative voices or maybe that warble, if you speak a little louder, it pushes through the nervousness. And so trust me, you won't be yelling in those meetings, but if you speak louder, it helps with that. What's the best way to approach meetings when you're in your first year? Yeah, absolutely. And so I would say that kind of also depends on kind of your role and what you're doing. But certainly, the first 90 days, couple months, you're observing. But then you have a period of time where you do want to, kind of get in and certainly you can ask some questions, but you can't ask questions forever. And so start offering kind of your ideas. And of course, that's going to differ by the culture of the organization as well. I don't know how hierarchical it is, but you can't sit back forever and you can't, on the first day start expounding everything as well because then they're like, oh, she wants to do everything in her last organization, right? So it is a delicate balancing act. I would say look at your stakeholders, look at the culture, and look at what you're trying to achieve. And then there's probably some people, maybe some peer mentors in the organization where you can just get a read on stakeholders and kind of different meeting forums and just say, what works here, what doesn't. Absolutely. Um, Oh, deep breathing. Yeah, remain calm under pressure. Absolutely. And so grounding yourself through breath. And if you do a belly breath, people don't even have to know that you're doing it. I'm doing a course, a positive intelligence course right now. Some of you may have done it. Some of you referred to the saboteurs. And I'm learning techniques to quickly calm. So rubbing two fingers together, for example, is my current favorite, so lightly that you feel the ridges on it, and just doing it for 10 seconds, which is 3 breaths, gets you from the fight or flight into the frontal cortex. So you can do it with your whole hand. So there's small things that you can do to just calm the nervous system, and they really do work. And then as soon as you catch the negative self-talk, you got to switch it. So for example, when I do speaking, I remember my first time speaking in front of a couple thousand people. I mean, I was just, I don't belong here. What am I doing? And I'm like, okay, Tammy, catch it. You belong here. You know things that other people don't, right? What does he know about the work that you're doing? He knows about the work he's doing. So catch it, reframe it, breathe, or do one of the other tips. Absolutely. Rubbing your pen and rose words. Love it. Very natural. Cool. Okay, just looking. I have the feeling that men have different expectations about women speaking up. How can we speak up and voice our contrary opinion? Yeah, so there, and that's where the double bind comes in, the stereotypes around the assertive aggressive stereotype. And so for me, the more human we can do things and the more we name it, helps. So again, I'm thinking about this differently, and if you hear some passion in my voice, it's because right, I'm really focusing on what our customers, our employees, whatever want here. Here's how I think we should proceed and why, and blah 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 blah. So yeah, unfortunately, it is a double bind, but not saying anything is not the way we're going to change that. Janet rushes when she's nervous, so slowing down. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I'm looking at the time here. Ramona, do you?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tammy. This is so fantastic. So many tips. I love so much what you've shared. And I loved having those things in your back of your pocket, having those lines ready, and so many good tips. Thank you so much. I saw there were some questions around recording and the slides. I think we have those. We are definitely sending out the recording to everyone who registered. And Tammy, we are sharing your slides, correct? Or
You,
not?
you can, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I can, but I guarantee you'll get more from the short article where it's got all
Yeah.
examples,
Yeah.
and these don't
Yeah.
have any examples in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's a great reminder. We have those articles linked for anyone who joined late. You can just scroll up. Hopefully, you can see them. Let us know if you don't. We are going to share the recording, the articles, and also I want to say before you go, again, I mentioned at the beginning, these are the kinds of talks and not just talks, but workshops that we are doing inside the WIA Empower Leader program. So we have something called a Leader Lab, and those are 90-minute workshops like this one, where we go in depth in really supporting women in social justice and social impact to really show up in an empowered way in meetings as leaders and really to tap into their strengths and to make an impact. So if you're interested, Mina will drop in the link for the info session. We are holding an info session to share more about the Empower Leader program. That is happening next week, next Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So, Mina just dropped those links for anyone interested to sign up for the info session. And our goal here at WA is to support women feel empowered and show up and rule those meetings and show up confidently. Um, so thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for being here, asking your questions, being engaged. Thank you so much, Tammy. Your storytelling is so powerful. It really is just making me personally think, and I know so many people are benefiting. Everyone connect with Tammy, connect with WIA, myself, Ramona at that WIA org. So yeah, let us know how this resonated. And if you have any questions, connect with either Tammy, myself, or
Thank you,
WIA.
everyone. Mhm.
Thank you for being here. If there's any one last thing that you want to add, Nilima, I see your message thanking Tammy. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. I know you have many places to be. I hope you're having a wonderful rest of your day and rest of your week.